So imagine setting up this massive, like multi-million-dollar political hit job to destroy your biggest rival.
Right. You got all your operatives in place. You're ready to go.
Exactly. You've cornered your target. You're totally ready to drop the hammer. And when you finally confront him, he just smiles, hands you his own criminal record, and asks if you want a cup of tea.
It's such a wild concept. It completely shorts out the social circuitry.
It really does. And today, we're exploring why that kind of radical vulnerability is sometimes a way more devastating weapon than blackmail.
Because when someone leverages their own darkest truths against you, all the traditional mechanics of power, manipulation, it all just evaporates.
And that psychological short circuit is exactly what we are unpacking in this deep dive. We're looking at a stack of sources centered around the early 20th century Indian writer Munshi Premchand.
Specifically, we're looking at his short story collection, Manasarovar Part 3.
Right. And our mission today is to dig into that gap between the masks we wear in public and the messy, often totally contradictory realities of who we are in private.
Premchand was just a master at diagnosing this societal hypocrisy.
Oh, absolutely.
And what's fascinating here is how he uses the rigid structures of his time, caste, class, patriarchy, to expose human behaviors that are honestly entirely universal.
Yeah, it's like he's putting these characters into these immense pressure cookers just to see what cracks first, Like, is it their public image or is it their actual soul?
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this by jumping straight into that political hit job scenario I mentioned earlier. This comes with the story Vishwas, which translates to faith or trust.
Right, and we have this massive collision between two titans here.
Yeah, on one hand you have Apte, who is this beloved, ascetic political leader. He lives with a blacksmith's family, wears rough cotton, and has the absolute devotion of the masses.
And on the other side is Miss Joshi.
Yes, the total opposite. She's a wealthy, elite socialite, deeply entangled with the powerful colonial governor, Mr. Johari.
So they really represent two fundamentally opposing sources of power. Apte derives his influence from moral authority and grassroots solidarity, while Miss Joshi gets hers from institutional wealth and proximity to the colonial state.
Right, and Apte just goes after her publicly.
Yeah.
He gives this blistering speech to a crowd of starving people, pointing directly at Miss Joshi's balcony.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's actively shaming her and the elite class for drinking wine and eating imported Spanish sweets while the populace is literally starving.
So naturally, Miss Joshi decides she has to destroy him.
Of course she does. She goes to his humble home with the explicit goal of finding his dark secret, maybe seducing him, or just doing whatever it takes to ruin his untouched reputation.
Because she operates on the assumption that everyone has a mask.
Right.
In her world, power is maintained by hiding your flaws, and leverage is gained by discovering the flaws of others. She fully expects to find a hypocrite.
But instead, she finds a guy who just freely admits he isn't a holy man at all.
It's brilliant.
He casually confesses that his real name is Damodar Modi, and he's actually an escaped convict from Nasik jail with a 500 rupee bounty on his head.
He used to be a thief.
Yeah, he just hands her the loaded gun to destroy him.
And that right there is the radical vulnerability. By owning his dark past so completely, he weaponizes his own truth.
Wow, yeah.
He completely strips Miss Joshi of her power because, well, you just cannot blackmail someone who refuses to feel shame about their reality.
I hear that, but couldn't you argue that Apte is just manipulating her in a different way?
How do you mean?
I mean, public masks exist for a reason, right? If everyone just acted out their private, messy truths and wore their criminal records on their sleeves, wouldn't society just collapse into total chaos?
Well, that's a fair challenge, but there is a difference between a functional, civil mask, like being polite, to a coworker you dislike just to maintain a functional office, and a deceptive mask used to hoard power.
Ah, okay. I see the distinction.
Apted isn't using his honesty as some calculated strategy to win a chess match. He's surrendered the game entirely.
Right.
And that lack of ego is what actually breaks Miss Joshi's worldview. She goes through this massive transformation, stripping off all her expensive jewelry, putting on a simple sari.
And ultimately pulling a gun on her own patron, Mr. Johari, to defend Apte.
Exactly. Premchand is showing us that raw, unvarnished truth has a gravity that manufactured righteousness simply cannot replicate.
Which is a perfect contrast to another character in our sources, Yashodanan from the story Anch Kasar, or A Little Short of the Mark.
Oh, Yashodanan, the classic public moralist.
Yes. If apte is the power of honest criminality, Yashodanan's reputation is like a Jenga tower built entirely out of pure ego and fake virtue.
So fragile.
Totally. He gives this booming speech denouncing the dowry system, soaking up the applause because he supposedly refused a 20,000 rupee dowry for his son.
Right, playing the saint.
And to really sell the performance, he brings his 7-year-old son, Parmanand, onto the stage to read this adorable prepared speech.
But the kid reaches into the wrong pocket.
Yes. Instead of the speech, he pulls out a secret extortion letter Yashodanan wrote to a client.
Unbelievable.
He was demanding a secret cut of a deal, something like, out of 25, 5 should be given as justice to me. And the kid just reads it directly into the microphone.
It's a brilliant comedic mechanism.
It really is.
Yashodanan's downfall isn't brought about by a cunning rival. It's brought about by the literal innocence of a child.
Right. Parmanand hasn't developed that adult machinery of deception yet.
Exactly. He doesn't know what an extortion letter is. He just reads the words.
It takes that total absence of guile to pull the wrong block and bring the whole hypocritical Jenga tower crashing down.
Absolutely.
But, that public humiliation is really nothing compared to the private terror we see elsewhere in the source.
Well, for sure. The tone shifts dramatically.
Yeah, when we shift from the public sphere of politicians and businessmen to the private domestic sphere, the stakes skyrocket.
They really do.
For the women in Premchand's world, falling afoul of rigid social rules doesn't just mean a bruised ego or getting laughed off a stage. It is a literal matter of life and death.
We move from the comedy of public hypocrisy to the absolute tragedy of the domestic prison.
Yeah.
The rules governing women in this era were not just strict. They were structurally designed to erase their humanity entirely.
The story, Nirasha, or Despair, illustrates this so brutally. We meet Nirupama, who is treated like a cursed outcast by her own husband, Kamandilal Tripathi.
And simply because she has given birth to 3 daughters.
Right, and he threatens to throw her out on the street if she has another girl.
It's horrific.
Her sister-in-law, Sukeshi, sees the danger and invents this elaborate lie. She creates a fake Mahatma and a strict regimen of fasting on Tuesdays and feeding Brahmins, claiming it guarantees a boy.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah, it buys Nirupama 3 years of relative peace. But I struggle with that, though.
Why is that?
By inventing this fake ritual, isn't Sukeshi just reinforcing the husband's delusion instead of fighting the system? She's playing into the exact same patriarchal madness that is torturing her sister-in-law.
Well, she is playing into it, undoubtedly. But you have to remember, when you are trapped in a burning building, you don't stop to argue about the structural flaws of the fire code.
You just grab whatever is wet.
Exactly. It's pure survival. Sukeshi actively uses the husband's own superstition against him. She feeds him a magical solution to manipulate his behavior and protect Nirupama.
That makes sense.
We have to look at the economic reality of the time. In this deeply entrenched system, women were reduced to vessels.
Right.
A daughter was viewed purely as a financial liability, a massive drain on resources due to the dowry system. A son was an economic asset and the continuation of the lineage. The husband's cruelty is just the blunt instrument of a society that places zero intrinsic value on a woman's life outside of her reproductive output.
And the physical toll of that psychological terror is just devastating.
It is.
Because when Nirupama eventually gives birth to a 4th child, and it's another girl, she doesn't die from an infection or a medical complication.
No.
Her heart literally gives out. She is killed by the sheer overwhelming terror of the societal rejection she knows is coming.
The mechanism of domestic terror is so absolute that her body simply shuts down rather than face the social execution.
And even if a woman survives, the social execution, the exile, can be a fate worse than death.
Which we see in Nirvasan, or exile.
Yes. Mariada gets lost at a crowded fair. She seeks shelter and is tricked by a man, a sweeper, disguised as a high-caste Brahmin who claims her husband sent him.
Right.
She realizes the trick, fiercely protects herself, escapes with her purity intact, and returns home safely. You'd think her husband, Parshuram, would be relieved.
You would think so, but the mechanics of honor in the society have nothing to do with actual morality or physical safety.
He coldly refuses to take her back. He tells her point blank that he believes her, he knows she is pure.
But because she was tricked by an untouchable, society's perception makes her unacceptable.
Yeah, he compares her to clean water touched by an untouchable swamp. The mere perception of contamination ruins it.
It's deeply cruel.
He throws her out onto the street and forbids her from ever holding her infant son, Vasudev, ever again.
This raises such an important question about how we define honor. Parshuram actually considers himself a progressive, educated man.
Right.
Yet when push comes to shove, he enforces the most archaic, cruel rule imaginable. Why? Because honor here is entirely about public relations.
Yeah.
It's about controlling the perception of his neighbors. He discards the mother of his child like a piece of damaged property purely to insulate his own fragile male ego from neighborhood gossip.
It makes you wonder about the unwritten rules we still enforce today,
Oh, absolutely.
Like, are we unknowingly demanding a performance from the people around us or forcing them to keep their masks on just because their messy reality would be socially inconvenient for us?
Parshuram is basically the ultimate enforcer of the crowd's tyranny. He outsources his morality to the mob. He knows what is right, but he chooses what is socially compliant.
It's infuriating to read. You feel this intense helplessness watching the machinery of society crush people like Nirupama and Maryada.
It's very heavy.
But the sources don't just paint women as passive victims of this machine. Premchand also explores how women wield incredible, almost subversive power.
And not the power of wealth or status.
Right, the power of transformative compassion.
The pivot from systemic oppression to individual agency is where his psychological insight really shines.
Here's where it gets really interesting. In the story Matrika-Hriday, or A Mother's Heart, we meet Madhavi.
Yes.
She is a widow, and her only son, Atmanand, who is this generous guy, is unjustly sentenced to prison by a highly corrupt, ruthless official named Mr. Bakshi.
Bakshi completely destroys her universe with the stroke of a pen.
So Madhavi decides her new reason for living is absolute vengeance. She disguises herself, infiltrates Bakshi's household, and plans to destroy him from the inside out.
She goes in expecting to find a cartoon villain reveling in his power and wealth.
But she finds a total nightmare instead. Bagi is a severe alcoholic. His wife is bedridden with anxiety because they have 5 daughters they can't afford to marry off.
There's that dowry terror creeping in again.
Exactly. And their infant son is suffering from severe fever, basically dying of the cold. Madhavi has the perfect opportunity. She can just stand there and let the child die as karmic payback.
If she operates by the rules of the society we just discussed, rules based on leverage, reputation, and transactional cruelty, she lets the child die.
But she doesn't. She spends the entire freezing night sitting by the crib, holding the dying infant to her own chest, warming him with her own body heat, and she saves his life.
It's an incredible moment.
Why does she do that? How does she just abandon her entire mission for revenge?
Well, if we analyze the psychology of motherhood that Premchand is highlighting here, Madhavi realizes something profound when she sees Bakshi's reality.
What's that?
She sees that Bakshi is already serving a life sentence in a prison of his own making.
Oh.
His corruption created a pervasive anxiety about maintaining his status, which led to his alcoholism, which is decaying his family. Her maternal instinct, that deep, intrinsic drive to nurture, completely overrides her manufactured desire to destroy.
She intended to deliver poison, but as the text suggests, she gave them nectar instead.
Exactly. By choosing mercy, she completely breaks the cycle of destruction. She proves that her humanity is stronger than his corruption.
She elevates herself above the entire broken system.
It's an act of quiet rebellion. The system expects her to be broken and vindictive. By being compassionate, she refuses to let Bakshi's corruption dictate her own moral center.
But, of course, the corrupt rarely escape entirely.
Sure.
Even if someone like Madhavi walks away, the sources illustrate that punishment still finds a way. It doesn't always look like a gavel coming down in a courtroom.
Sometimes the prison is built by the incredibly fickle, suffocating weight of the crowd.
Right, the invisible social prisons are often the ones with the strongest bars. Let's look at the mechanism of social justice in the story Dand, which translates to punishment.
Okay.
Mr. G. Sinha is another official, and he takes a bribe from a man named Jagat Pandey. Pandey feels cheated, but he doesn't go to the police.
No, he uses a deeply intense form of cultural blackmail.
He sits on Sinha's front porch and decides to starve himself to death.
It's a method of forcing the private sin into the public square. Pandey is using his own suffering as a spotlight.
And Sinha's wife is terrified of the karmic implications, but Sinha refuses to back down. He won't publicly admit he took the bribe.
He's too stubborn.
He actually states that an officer exposed for bribery feels more shame than a thief being whipped. He is willing to let a man die on his doorstep rather than let his public mask slip.
Because for someone like Sinha, the mask is his entire identity. If he loses his reputation as an upright official, he loses his leverage in society.
So he lets Pandey suffer. But the public sees it. The neighborhood watches this man starving on the porch, and they enact their own justice.
Right.
The resulting social boycott completely isolates Sinha's family. It gets so bad that it ruins his daughter's, Triveni's, marriage prospects.
It's devastating.
He avoids legal punishment, but the social isolation suffocates his family's future.
It demonstrates how public morality operates as its own judiciary. The law might not catch Sinha, but the collective disgust of his community builds a wall around him that he simply cannot climb over.
And the sources bring in a fascinating historical parallel here to show how this psychology of the crowd isn't just a 20th century Indian phenomenon.
Oh, this is a brilliant conceptual pivot.
Yeah, you see this same suffocating, unpredictable power of the mob looking back at ancient Greece with the story of the traitor Pausanias.
Because the mechanism of the crowd is truly universal.
Pausanias betrays his country, selling military secrets to the Iranians for a life of luxury. His secret is discovered, and it's actually his own mother who unwittingly leads a furious mob to trap him. He hides inside a sacred temple where they can't legally execute him. So the mob just removes the roof and leaves him to freeze or burn to death from exposure.
They engineer a loophole to execute him without technically breaking the religious law. It's calculated collective rage.
But here's the wild part. After a full night of listening to him suffer, the mob arrives the next morning and the anger has just, well, it's just burned out.
They suddenly feel pity.
Yeah, and Pausanias is a cunning manipulator. He feels the mood shifting and uses reverse psychology. He begs the crowd, "Do not trust me. I am a traitor."
Which is so smart.
And because he actively leans into his guilt, the mob instantly flips. They decide his suffering has purified him, they declare him a saint, and they start planning a parade.
A complete 180.
How does a crowd go from a lynch mob to a parade committee in 12 hours?
Because a mob does not possess a centralized, rational brain. It operates entirely on emotional momentum and contagion.
Right.
When they trapped him, the momentum was righteous anger. But anger is exhausting to sustain. When they return, they are emotionally depleted.
Makes sense.
By screaming, "Don't trust me," Pausanias disrupts the expected script. He doesn't beg for mercy, which would validate their power. He agrees with their initial anger, which ironically short-circuits their collective rage.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, both Mr. Sinha and the Greek traitor Pausanias reveal something deeply unsettling about justice and public opinion.
What's that?
Justice is rarely a clean, straight line. Sinha escapes the law but is crushed by the slow, suffocating weight of social isolation.
Yeah.
Pausanias faces brutal, immediate mob justice, but manipulates that exact same crowd into worshiping him. The crowd is a righteous judge one minute and a foolish accomplice the next.
It proves how incredibly fragile public morality truly is. When we outsource our moral judgments to the collective, we are putting our faith in a system that is driven by emotion, easily manipulated, and inherently unstable.
So what does this all mean for us? I mean, we've covered a lot of ground today, moving from the political stages of Bombay to quiet, tragic living rooms and all the way back to the temples of ancient Greece.
It's been quite the journey.
Premchand stories relentlessly force us to look past the surface layer of society. They demand that we ignore the impressive titles, the hoarded wealth, and the booming public speeches.
He strips away the architecture of society to show us the raw human behavior underneath.
Whether we are looking at the disarming honesty of an escaped convict like Apti, the cold, PR-driven cruelty of a husband like Parshuram, or the breathtaking mercy of a grieving mother like Madhavi, the underlying truth is the same.
Absolutely.
True character is never revealed in the spotlight, when everyone is watching and the mask is firmly in place. True character is revealed in the dark.
It's revealed when the systems we rely on fail us, and we are left with nothing but our own internal moral compass.
We spent this entire deep dive talking about how society judges us when the mask slips, and the terrifying consequences of falling out of favor with the crowd. But consider this, Premchand was writing in an era where you could, theoretically, move to a new town and start over.
Right, the village had geographic limits.
Exactly. But for you, the listener, in our hyper-connected digital age, where every single mistake, every awkward moment, and every slipped mask is permanently recorded and broadcasted globally,
It changes things.
are we losing the ability to ever take the mask off? Is the modern internet just an inescapable, permanent version of Parshuram's cruel village?
A panopticon where the performance must never end.
Right. We spend so much of our lives trying to pass society's tests. But what if the ultimate test The true Parisha of life, if you will, isn't about how well we follow the rules of the crowd, but who we choose to be when the crowd isn't looking.
That's a powerful thought.
It leaves you standing right there in the wings, staring at the reality behind the curtain, wondering if the curtain will ever actually fall. We'll leave you to mull that over.